Call our meeting to order. Today we have representatives here excuse me, from CN, CP, and the Railway Association. Thanks, gentlemen, for all of you for being here to participate in our study. And we'll move right into presentations. And Mr. Bork, 10 minutes or less, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Michael Bork, and I'm the President of the Railway Association of Canada. I'm delighted to be here with my colleagues from CN and CP. Our association represents most of the railways in Canada, mainline railroads like CN and CP, some 40 short-line railroads, Via Rail, commuter railways such as GO and AMT, as well as tourist railways including the famous Rocky Mountaineer. We also represent some 65 railway supplier members who are important partners of Canada's great rail industry. Canada's railways know that the safety discussion has taken on an even greater urgency and importance post-Lac Mégantic. This tragedy deeply affected every railroader and every railroad in Canada. We know we are in a different environment now, and we accept our position with responsibility and humility. Allow me to now speak briefly about our concrete actions in this post-Lac Mégantic world, what we have done, what we are doing, and what we are committed to do. Permettez-moi de vous parler brièvement des mesures concrètes.
Allow me to speak briefly about the concrete actions in this post-Lac Mégantic world, what we have done, what we are doing, and what we are committed to do.
The rail industry had been working collaboratively with its regulators, unions, and other stakeholders on outstanding Transportation Safety Board recommendations and watch list items. Our success rate at clearing TSB recommendations stands at 90%. Good, but we still have some room for improvement. Importantly, the industry's efforts allowed the TSB to remove 2 rail safety items from their 2012 watch list: implementation of rail safety management systems and the operation of longer, heavier trains. These efforts were in addition to the significant investments in plant, equipment, safety technology, training, and process improvement made by Canada's railways. And yet, unfortunately, the Lac Mégantic tragedy occurred. As you know, within days of the accident, the Transportation Safety Board issued 2 safety advisory letters concerning the securement of unattended trains, locomotives, and equipment. Transport Canada immediately followed these up with an emergency directive which covered these matters as well as the operation of single-person train crews. Canada's railways collaborated fully with Transport Canada in order to get these safety improvements in place immediately. Similarly, when the TSB issued safety advisory letters concerning proper product labeling for crude, Transport Canada followed up with a protective direction. Again, the rail industry took immediate steps to put these new procedures in place. In short, the industry had a strong collaborative safety action record prior to the accident and worked quickly with government to implement the new requirements identified to date as a result of the tragedy. In addition to the ongoing investments, training, and operating improvements I just mentioned, the industry is undertaking a number of actions, including working with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities to enhance the supply of information concerning dangerous goods movement to local emergency responders, redoubling our efforts on safety culture development, among other things, by developing safety culture assessment tools and making a commitment to safety culture a requirement for the membership in the Railway Association of Canada. We're developing principles for the use of in-cab audio and video recording systems as part of our safety management systems, which is a TSB recommendation. Jointly with Transport Canada and local municipalities, we're redoubling our efforts on grade crossing safety, including closing redundant crossings, upgrades at existing crossings, and education through the Operation Lifesaver program. We make about 2,000 presentations per year in Operation Lifesaver, working with government, police, unions, the media, public organizations, and the public themselves to spread the word. We're requiring all non-pressure tank cars ordered for dangerous goods service after October of 2011 to be of the enhanced design. We're also redoubling our efforts for emergency preparedness through first responder training, dangerous goods training, and outreach such as TransCare, as well as our own safety programs at the RAC. This year, we expect to train over 2,500 firefighters, about 600 industrial plant personnel, and over 200 railway employees. In the last 5 years, we've trained about 17,000 stakeholders across Canada. We're also working with a number of associations, including the Canadian Association of Petroleum Products and the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs, on emergency preparedness, response, training, and mutual aid. We fully expect government action in other areas, and we're committed to working with regulators and stakeholders to put them in place. This could include the accelerated removal from dangerous goods service of the legacy DOT 111 tank car fleet, enhanced insurance and compensation regimes, and regulations and measures flowing from the Railway Safety Act. I'll just make one editorial comment if I'm allowed, and that is that some choose to portray the railway safety in Canada as deregulated or self-regulation. But I believe that nothing could be further from the truth. The Railway Safety Act is a modern piece of legislation that has been extensively reviewed and updated since its passage in 1989. It provides for a robust regime of regulatory inspections, oversight, compliance, and enforcement actions, including recently enhanced administrative and judicial penalties against companies and individuals. And in parallel with this regulatory regime, it requires each company to have its own safety management system with the attendant focus on proactive risk assessment and management, employee involvement, audit, and safety culture development. Those are requirements under the Act. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll look forward to questions later. And
Thank you very much. And now move to CP and Mr. Creel. You've got 10 minutes or less, please.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to discuss rail safety and safety management systems today. In the interest of time, I cannot get into all the elements of rail safety, especially the regulatory regime. However, I do understand you'll be hearing from additional witnesses specifically on the robust regulatory regime in place in Canada, including the Rail Safety Act and safety management systems. CP operates a 22,000-kilometer network through Canada and the United States. In 2013, we moved over 2.6 million carloads of traffic, with each car moving an average of 1,400 kilometers. Approximately two-thirds of that traffic moves to or from a port or border gateway as part of Canada's global trade. The Canadian railway industry is one of the safest in the world. CP recognizes that the best way to provide effective service to our customers and to execute our part in the supply chain is to operate as safely as possible. I'm proud to say that CP is the safest railway in North America. We've achieved the lowest frequency of train accidents railway industry in each of the last 8 years. In 2013, that equated to 1.8 Federal Railroad Administration reportable train accidents for every million train miles we operated. A train accident was reportable in 2013 under FRA standards when the damage exceeded $10,000 US. With the locomotives costing approximately $2.5 million and the amount of heavy steel in motion we have in our business, you can imagine it's not very hard to have damages that exceed that amount. Yet we only did that 1.8 times for every million miles of train operations in 2013. We achieved these high standards for safety through a combination of people, process, technology, and investment. Two areas I'll speak to today will focus on will be people and technology. Our journey is not yet complete, but the continuous improvement in safety is evident as we better and better understand how to monitor, predict, and prevent where we could previously only search and react. If you look at the statistics, and we do that a lot on this railroad, we see that the incidents caused by equipment and track failures are trending down. In fact, in 2012, Canadian railroads had the safest year on record. A big part of the reason for a reduction in the number of incidents caused by equipment failures is because we continue to improve our assets. This year, we'll spend between $1.2 to $1.4 billion to improve our railroad, especially the track we operate over. In deciding where to invest, we look at the most critical areas. Another piece of this is technology on the railroad. We now have hundreds of wayside inspection systems which look in an automated manner at the status of equipment such as bearings, wheels, and track. These technologies are in various stages of development. Some are proven and implemented, while others are still in development. These technologies are fundamentally changing the way we inspect infrastructure and equipment by enabling proactive identification of emerging problems. This allows the railroad to focus repair efforts on problem areas before they present risks to the operation. We'll continue to invest in safety-enhancing technologies as we move forward. Every incident at CP is taken very seriously. I review in detail personally all incident reports on a daily basis. We push very hard when it comes to rules compliance. We set expectations for people who are leaders on the ground and expect those to be met. Training is also very important not only for current but also future railroaders. We invest significantly in training, coaching, recognition, and in obtaining employee input to strengthen our safety culture. At a corporate level, we're committed, but we're also focused, most specifically, manager and employee accountability. My job is to set the expectation to provide the tools, including training, so people know what's expected. I have said many, many times, no job on our railroad will ever be so important that we can't take time to do it safely. Safety enables performance. I want every person, every man and woman who comes to work every day to operate in a manner which puts safety first and foremost. People's lives are at risk. That must be at top of mind every day, every hour, every minute we're on the property. Where we're seeing, however, is a stubborn flat line of statistics is an area called human factors. These are incidents essentially caused by human error. This is one area we need to focus on going forward. That's why we want to add cameras and recording devices in locomotives. Today, there's a convergence of onboard locomotive technologies occurring whereby a number of information technologies can be linked, including outward-facing cameras, locomotive cab digital recording, and various detection systems. Identifying these human factors is critical to understanding why accidents occur, before they occur. When companies cannot use voice and video recordings proactively, they're deprived of opportunities to reduce risk and improve safety, as I've said, before an accident occurs. I urge you to consider recommending changes to the statutory provisions to fully allow deployment of this technology. In my view, this is the most important step that can be taken at the immediate time to further improve safety. In terms of the movement of dangerous goods, railroads in Canada and North America, for that matter, have what is called a common carrier obligation. That means if a shipment is presented to the railroad, we have to move it. It's the law. The customer can also instruct us on how they'd like their product moved. The fact is, do we want to be moving some of these products? Probably not. But it's the only way some of these products will get moved. My problem is each time we move these products, we take a significant risk that can not only have tragic consequences for the public, but also for the railroad. Producers of some of these products would argue that these products need to be made. They would submit that they drive the economy, sanitize your water, and that they are not highly substitutable. I can buy that to some degree, but not completely. That is why we're looking for some changes in government policy to ensure that the regime deals with the risk and liability in a manner that is in the broad public interest. There's also urgency about the need for safer tank cars to move these dangerous goods in. We at CP have been very vocal about this for some time. The vast majority of rail cars that carry crude and other hazardous materials are single-walled cars known as DOT 111 cars. I'm not very happy with these cars for moving dangerous goods. In fact, not happy at all. There's a process that's been started in the United States, which Canada is also involved in, looking at the new tank car standards and how to phase out the older ones. I look forward to this outcome from the process that sees more new cars coming online sooner versus later. If we can get everyone working together, adopting a higher level of safety and accountability, we're going to be able to continue to reassure our neighbors and the communities we operate in and through that they can sleep at night. A lot of you see trains going through your towns and you're concerned. I get that. The pictures from Lake Megantic cause sleepless nights for all of us. I'd like to reaffirm to you that we do operate safely. We continue to improve our safety performance. CP is the leader in North America rail safety. That is something that I'm not only very proud of, but continue to be focused on every day. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, and we'll now move to CN. Mr. Vina or Mr. Parko?
Jim Venna, but that's fine. Thank you.
Venna.
I've been called lots of things, but nobody gets that last name right, I need it a little longer. So good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity of allowing me to present before you. My name is Jim Venna. It's actually Vincenzo Venna, but that's okay. From Jasper, Alberta, Executive Vice President, Chief Operating Officer with CN Rail. I'm also accompanied by Michael Farku, our Vice President, Safety and Sustainability. We understand the committee is being asked to review the safe transportation of dangerous goods and the role of safety management systems. This morning I will be touching these very points and explain the regulations which oversee the rail transportation in our industry and additional measures our railroad has put in place and continues to work towards. CN has an unwavering commitment to rail safety and is continually building multiple lines of defense through people, process, technology, and investment. The CN safety record for accidents continues to see improvements. Between 2003 and 2013, CN's main track accidents declined by approximately 50%, even with the amount of business that's been increased. And since 2009, we've seen a 30% increase in business alone. I won't even go back to 2003. We are committed to continuous improvement and continue to seek and implement additional lines of defense to make an already solid safety record even better. A lot of discussion is being heard on the self-regulation of the rail industry. This point can be no further from the truth, as Michael has spoken before. The rail industry is very much regulated in all facets of its operation. This can be seen through the extensive Canadian rail operating rules, whereby the rules are reviewed, vetted, and compliance monitored by Transport Canada. The inspection process for both infrastructure and rolling stock is much the same. We have stringent standards for the inspection frequency and tolerances allowed for track, signals, freight cars, and locomotives, to mention but a few. The committee must recognize at CN we clearly understand the regulations in place are a minimum, and we exceed regulations on many fronts. In fact, the regulation says we only have to do rail fly detection 4 times a year, and we're doing it up to 18 times a year in places. About SMS, allow me to address an area that this committee is reviewing, and that's the safety management system, better known to us as our SMS plan. As was already indicated, the SMS is a plan that we're all regulated to have in place. It's what guides CN on all our elements of safety. SMS is an explicit set of processes designed to integrate safety into all decision-making, planning, and operational activities. CN has taken the requirements of SMS and translated this into a plan consisting of actionable steps exercised on a continual basis with our operations workforce and management. The steps encompass the requirements and representative involvement in safety management and safety culture development, risk assessment, safety audit and evaluation, accident and incident reporting, investigation analysis, and corrective action. So it's a broad range. The CN SMS plan is also explained in our leadership and safety brochure, which if anybody wants to go see, there's a new copy of it on our website. This brochure is available to the general public, and all our employees get it sent to their homes. One element which would be of particular interest to this committee is our risk mitigation work performed through our corridor risk assessments, whereby we review the amount of dangerous goods, population density, topography, and the proximity to waterways and the environment to see what we need to do and how we operate and what secondary measures we need in place. Auditing and monitoring is yet another key element of our SMS plan. We perform audits with our 106 safety and health committees made up of unionized and management employees, and we do detailed integrated audits with management to ensure compliance of policies, instruction, and operating rules. We perform daily auditing on the tasks of our employees by virtue of our efficiency testing process, and we performed over 400,000 of those tests in 2013. This amounts to well over 1,000 a day. I don't know why we did that. You guys are good with math, but we had to divide it anyways. This auditing is over and above the monitoring and inspections which Transport Canada would perform on our railroad in Canada. Safety culture. I need to talk about safety culture because this is very important to us in an area that we continue to strive to get better. A successful ingredient in the world of safety is safety culture, and CN is building strong elements to foster the safety culture. Safety culture is creating a true belief and desire for being safe. We interact with our System Health and Safety Committee, for which I am a member, along with our employee representative, to discuss and develop means to build on this. We have developed peer engagement groups, initiated safety summits, and onboarding programs for new hires to our company. We are industry leaders in measuring safety culture, which is featured in Transport Canada's website. We have worked closely with St. Mary's University in developing the CN Centre for Occupational Health and Safety. In fact, we will be holding a symposium on safety culture in October at the university, where we will be expecting interested government agencies, railroad industry, university academics to help further the subject of safety culture. We are committed to creating the right safety environment for our employees and management. Now, I'd just like to talk for a minute about the dangerous goods, especially after post-Lac-Mégantic. I've been railroading since 1975 was the first time I started. I actually started throwing ties out of boxcars. So I thought I'd give you a little history of myself. And then in 1977, while I was going to the University of Alberta, I hired on, and I was a brakeman when we had 4 and 5 people on trains. And after that, I was a conductor, and after that, I became a locomotive engineer before I finished off my degree. So I've seen railroading have some number of accidents, and we always have to make sure we sit down and learn, because as much as we think that we've done everything we can, there comes a point where you have an incident, you got to make sure that you have not missed anything in all the processes you have, and you move ahead. Rail transportation safety is about identifying, analyzing, and mitigating risks throughout our network. Dangerous goods travel, rail transportation is a subject which has come under great public interest. On a factual basis, the transportation of dangerous goods in North America is very safe. We transport without incident 99.997% of dangerous goods safely from origin to their respective destination. However, this statistic does not provide any level of comfort when an incident such as Lac Megantic occurs. This truly tragic event, which claimed the lives of 47 individuals, cannot be forgotten, and has allowed us to step back and evaluate our SMS plan and review opportunities to further enhance our robust plan. We believe several lines of defense may have gone wrong for such an accident to occur in this runaway train in Lac Megantic. However, we await the TSB's report and recommendations on their analysis and findings on this incident. But let's talk about a few of them. One that we know about is securement. CN has worked closely with all the stakeholders in addressing concerns in the securement of railway equipment. Transport Canada issued an emergency directive on the means, which CN had already many of the suggested changes in place. The element of securing the locomotives and application of handbrakes was an example of some of the elements which CN had previously put in place, but we felt they were strong and added a few of the changes that were given to us and we worked with Transport Canada to put in place. I want to talk for a minute about OT55, and let me explain it. CN did not stop at this one element with its operation. We began reviewing other areas which we felt would strengthen our lines of defense. One such area was adoption in Canada of a speed restriction for hazardous goods having more than 20 carloads of such cars or one toxic or poisonous inhalation car on a train on high volume corridors of dangerous goods to a maximum speed of 50 miles an hour. This industry adopted approach in the United States was brought up to Canada, our Canadian rail operation. As an example, a train carrying 20 or more dangerous goods between Toronto and Montreal can now not exceed 50 miles an hour. The adoption of the OT55 policy has been in place since August 13 of 2013 on our network. Earlier this year, U.S. Secretary of Transport had a call to action by all the Class 1 railroads to assist in further strengthening the lines of defense for rail transportation. As an industry, we came together and developed several commitments which we would undertake for the movement of crude oil. These items consisted, to name a few, speed restriction of 40 miles per hour in a high-threat urban area of trains carrying 20 or more crude oil cars, having as a minimum one older-style .111 car. So if you have a train with one .111 car, you're restricted to 40 miles an hour. Review of routes for crude oil. So if you have options, we looked at risk assessment and how we would operate if you have options of where you operate. Wayside detection, which allows for the inspection of moving trains at an interval of no more than 40 miles, even though we in most of our main routes and most of our routes had the frequency in less than 40 miles. We made sure that there wasn't any areas where we were not compliant. And although there are others, I've taken the time to mention these commitments that CN is, and we'll be bringing these items to our Canadian network. So everything we agreed to in the U.S., the speed restriction, the 40-mile spacing, we're going to implement it in the Canadian side of the operation. Also want to just take a minute and talk about emergency response in communities. CN has undertaken a number of initiatives to strengthen emergency response and to engage communities, including the following. In line with dangerous good volumes along rail routes, resources and processes to enhance response has been strengthened. Initiated mutual aid protocols with other railways to leverage greater response. CP and CN might be competitors, but we work together to say, where do you have equipment, what do you have in place, just in case anything ever happened that we could respond. Engaging customers and other stakeholders, such as the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, to work together as a group. And leveraging the TRAN program to train external responders to augment readiness. CN also believes that the rail industry can enhance safety by working closely with communities through its structured community engagement program, which we launched last October. CN is engaging municipalities by approaching municipal officials and their emergency responders to ensure they have contact information for appropriate CN officials, as well as targeted information. We have reached out to 1,098 communities in Canada and initiated 100 outreach meetings with our dangerous good officers. In these meetings, we discuss CN's comprehensive safety plan, solid safety performance, the nature, volume, and economic importance of dangerous goods we transport through their communities, and review emergency response planning. We also arrange to conduct training centers for emergency responders when required. On technology, I got a couple minutes left. I'll go fast. Technology, risk mitigation. A key area which CN is continuously leveraging is technology. Following the Lac-Mégantic accident, we have also taken a step back and reviewed our existing comprehensive network of technology. This network consists of inspection technologies with monitoring the health of a moving train for wheel conditioning, bearing temperatures, dragging equipment. The network is among the densest network in North America. We also reviewed our infrastructure inspection technologies, which consisted of ultrasonic rail flaw detection. This actually looks at the rail to see if any discontinuities exist in the rail. Track geometry technologies whereby we measure the gauge of the rail, cross level, alignment, and profile. In November 2013, we announced a further $10 million capital investment, which complemented our already robust investment of $2 billion in 2013. Of the $2 billion capital investment in 2013, we invested $1.2 billion in rail and signal infrastructure on our own right-of-way. The additional technology investment consists of additional wayside equipment, inspection system, a new track geometry test car, an optical track inspection system, brittle bar detectors to minimize the adversity, and controlled signaling on certain key sidings. These additional investments will continue to layer our lines of defense and mitigate our risks. Quickly, I'll talk about DOT 111. I think you've heard from both, and we've been very upfront that we think that it is time to change out the DOT 111 cars. And in fact, instead of repeating it for time, we use about 40 that we own. We don't have a lot of tank cars, but we have 40 of them that we do own ourselves, and we use them in the movement of diesel, which is not the same classification and packing group as the other commodities. But we thought it was important enough to show some leadership in this, and by the end of this year, we will have removed the 40 and replaced it with 40 new ones of the latest vintage. In conclusion, CN believes that safety is a journey and not a destination. Our safety record continues on the right trend line with decreases in accidents. However, recognize that much work lies ahead of us. The robust regulatory framework is in place, and our SMS plan is key to ensuring that we continue to operate in the safest manner possible. Through people, process, technology, and investment, we will continue to further our risk mitigation on this continuum of our safety journal. With that, Mr. Chair, members, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Venna. We'll now move to questioning. Mr. Mai, 7 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci aux...
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you also to our witnesses for being here with us this morning. As you know, and you've all mentioned this, the extent to which the Lac-Mégantic tragedy has changed the way Canadians see railways. I know that Mr. Brook in particular mentioned this, and Mr. Venna as well. In speaking about your vision of deregulation, you don't agree. The way we see it is that, and I agree with you on this, yes, there is deregulation that occurs. Things are changing, the laws are changing, but there is testimony. When the government put in regulations to ensure safety, that was the basis, that was the groundwork. And it is companies like yours who are very concerned about security, who have increased the standards and gone beyond what was imposed on you by the government. In Transport Canada, they say, yes, the regulations are there. Yes, the Auditor General says, and the Safety Office also says, that Transport Canada does not have the funding to ensure everything So from a political point of view, we don't agree with the government's take that the rules are minimal rules and that the companies should go beyond what is there. Here's my question, though. There is a problem that people have to face, and that is transparency in terms of information. You know, the content of dangerous goods that are being transported is not always made available to the municipalities. Yes, there are SMSs that are there from Transport Canada, but often the municipality isn't aware. The people don't know what's being transported through their municipality. So, and they're concerned. That deals with infrastructure in St. Lambert, for example, St. Lambert. We know we're not experts, but people see what's going through their community, and they are concerned about the infrastructure. My question is to CN in particular. When people are concerned and ask questions about the infrastructure, what can they do to have more information to ensure that the inspections are being made properly and they can obtain the information they need? I'll begin and I'll answer the question that deals with the Auditor General's report, and then after that I'll ask CN to reply to the question that deals with CN, and I will answer you in English, sir.
And then CN can answer the question for their company. And I just wanted to make the following point, and that is that the recommendation that the Auditor General made that struck me was that there wasn't sufficient number of audits of SMS as part of their regime. At the same time, there have been a significant number of inspections by Transport Canada, some 30,000 last year. And in the wake of the tragedy at Lac-Mégantic, what we found was that there was a clamoring by critics and others for more inspections, more punishment, and that's precisely in an opposite direction from a reliance on the safety management system and an audit of the safety management system, which is seen, and again, the Railway Safety Act was passed just 2 years ago with unanimous consent. And the reason that we have the system that we do and the construct using safety management systems is because it is accepted worldwide as being the most effective way that you can manage safety within complex organizations like railways. And so, unfortunately, what we get often is a knee-jerk reaction that we need to inspect more, we need to, throw more regulation. But in fact, it is the safety management system that's...
Je voulais juste préciser là-dessus parce que...
I'd just like to add this. I know you've mentioned the 30,000 inspections, but when you discover there are problems in 74%, I believe, there is no follow-up. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to move on to something else. In 2011, Mr. Hunter Harrison, the CEO of Grand Pacific, said,
Vieux wagon d'essence. Stop them tomorrow. Don't wait for a study. We know the facts. You know what it comes down to, and I hate to say this, it's the almighty dollar. Who's going to pay for this? Monsieur Venat, vous avez mentionné que vous êtes...
Mr. Venna, you said that you've been able to replace the tanker cars. Will the Safety Transport CP do the same? Will there be a replacement of the tanker cars? We know that there have been problems over a long period of time. It's been very, very clear in terms of the recommendations that were recently made by the Safety Board. Do you have a time frame, a calendar for replacing these tanker cars? CPs?
The tanker cars, as far as transition, it will take a couple of years to be able to do it. An exact time frame we've not came to yet. but we are in the process of developing that. A key point to remember, though, the tanker cars at CP haul diesel fuel. Diesel fuel is dangerous. I'm not suggesting it's not, but it's the same fuel. It's low risk relative to other items, and it's the same fuel that our locomotives burn. So it's something we're seized with, we're concerned with, but I just want to make that point known. That is the only thing that CP hauls in those cars.
If I could answer, you had a question earlier on about the transparency and the products that we move through the municipalities. I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding about this whole issue. One is on every train there's a conductor, and part of his job is to make sure he's got a list of everything that's being carried on the train. It's always with the train. On top of that, to make sure that we know what's on the train, our computer system keeps track of every train, by car, what's on every train. We keep track of it, what's at the customer siding that we've spotted. We keep track of it in our yards and where they are. So at no time do we have any commodity that we do not understand what's on the train. We have automated systems that read the trains as they go by, just as you would at the grocery store, that read the barcode when they leave, just in case a human makes a mistake. We have systems in place that do that. So on the train, there is no train moving today, right now in Canada, on CN or CP, that we would not have a complete list of what's on the train. Now it's how do you engage the communities that you operate through. We think the best way to commute is it's not a big change. Every day we don't get new products. We have a number of products that we handle. The flow of them might be different, but at the end of the day, it's a set number of products that go through. And if there's a new one, we need to sit down to make sure we have the response and the communities have the response. And that's why we have a community outreach program that is formalized. We sit down with the responders to understand exactly. I think you have to be careful that you don't cross too far with making it completely live what we have on there, even though we do know live what we have on the trains. But you don't want people that should not know what we're carrying on these trains as we run through North America with them. And in fact, in the U.S., they do not want us to tell people live what we have exactly on that train at that moment in the public venue so that everybody can see it for security reasons. So the municipalities, we work close, and that's why we said we're going to target over 1,000 of the communication with them, and if there's something else they want for information, we're more than willing to give it to them. Numbers per day, per week, the different types of commodities, how you respond, what we need to do, and how we operate through their place. On the infrastructure, we have regulations that tell us how many times, and we exceed those regulations because we think it's smart in areas just because of the mix of traffic and the interaction of the risk assessments we do. But if anybody phones us and says, would you take a look at the track in Saint-Lambert? First of all, our chief legal officer lives in Saint-Lambert. He's the first guy to phone us if he thought that he could hear anything different. But second of all, we're more than willing to make sure that we got a safe infrastructure, and we'd react like anybody else. Hopefully I answered the questions.
Thanks. We'll now move to Mr. McGinney, 7 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here this morning. My first question is, gentlemen, are you prepared to come back if we need more time with you? This is an extremely complex subject. We're struggling with reconciling all kinds of different moving parts, but would you be prepared to come back if we were invited by the committee to testify again? Yes? Thank you. Could I also begin by asking the two companies here, CP and CN, can you just give Canadians who are watching an idea, what were your gross revenues last year? Mr. Vena?
Gross revenues just north of $10 billion.
10 billion? Mr. Creel? $6 billion. Okay. So we're talking here, grosso modo, $16 billion of gross revenues last year. Okay. Gentlemen, it's hard to slice this. There are so many moving parts, as I said. You're the regulated. Transport Canada is the regulator. You've got the Transportation Safety Board issuing new standards. You've got a scathing Auditor General's report that cannot be skated around. You've got your insurance companies. You've got shareholders and shareholder value. You're under a lot of pressure. My first opening comment would be I'm a little bit surprised at the response by the railway companies, because I look to other examples of crises in recent Canadian history. I look, for example, at the listeriosis crisis, and I look at the way McCain's handled that crisis, and it's very different from the way the railways have handled Lac-Mégantic. I think McCain's got out in front of the issue. I think they were extremely forthright. I think they were transparent. I think they admitted their mistakes. They held press conferences, one after the other after the other. And I'm not seeing that in the railway sector. One of the issues I want to raise with you that jumps out loud and clear in the Auditor General's report, which Mr. Bourque referred to, is the whole question of audits. Now, it is important to get on the record that the Conservative government spends more money each and every year on economic action plan advertising than they do on railway safety. Right? I've raised this repeatedly. I even went to the Minister of Finance, asked him to stop it in the budget, which he wouldn't do. So they're spending more money on advertising than rail safety. It's important for Canadians to know that. I want to ask about the whole question of Transport Canada's role here. Mr. Bourque, you alluded to this partnership between the regulated and the regulator, the instrument being the safety management system. I think Canadians understand it's a shared responsibility. But when you see that only 25% of the audits that Transport Canada said were necessary to keep your railways in compliance were actually performed, that's a problem. That's a really big problem for Canadians. So let me ask, if I could, the two corporate representatives here, what do you make of Transport Canada's performance? Because I'm sure, from a shareholder value perspective, you want to assure your shareholders, your investors, and your insurance companies that you're putting the right amount of pressure on the regulator to make damn sure they're actually doing their jobs. So can I ask you, what is your response with respect to the audits that were not performed? Mr. Vena.
Sure. Why don't I start off, and Keith, you can jump in. Listen, it's not my job to worry that the regulator is given enough money to regulate.
It's not your job?
No. My job is to run a safe railroad. My job is to live up to the regulations that are in place, use the regulations as a basis to start with, build on it, and make sure that we run the safest railway possible. You heard CP say that they got the best accident ratio in the industry. We're not that far behind. Okay, we're all very close, and we're all trying to improve and get better. That's my job. So I'm not going to comment on what the government's doing. That's, you guys have that discussion. That's your job. What I will talk about, though, is the audits. We see Transport Canada personnel out there. We see Transport Canada safety personnel. We see Transport Canada targeting certain areas. They do a decent job from what we see looking at areas where we find issues. I don't know about the Auditor General's report. I've read it, but I can't really comment. That's between that and Transport Canada. For us, though, on the railroad, we go out and do 1,000 audits a day. And we do that on purpose to see what our employees are doing, trying to change the safety culture, working with St. Mary's University to change the culture. Peer-to-peer, we work with our unions on a daily basis. For me, that's what's important. And the trend line in accidents, can we get better? Yes, we want to get better. We'd like it as low as possible and as close to zero, and we're not there. But at the end of the day, that's what's important.
I hear you, but here's the report from the Auditor General, and I have to say I'm a little surprised, as a recovering corporate lawyer, that you would say that your company is not interested in finding out what the regulator is doing. I mean, your social license is derived, right? I mean, even the fossil fuel companies in Canada now understand they can't act without making sure that their social license is warranted. I mean, your shareholders are asking questions. Let me ask you, Mr. Creel, what does your company have to say about the Auditor General's report, the lack of enforcement, the lack of inspectors, the lack of audits that are going on? This is part and parcel of your SMS relationship with the regulator.
Certainly. Mr. McGinty, I would say that I'm not seized day to day with the audits that have not been performed at Transport Canada. I would say that in my experience with Transport Canada, I've never had an inspector, I've never had a Transport Canada officer hesitant to issue a notice or notice an order if they find an unsafe condition. What we are seized with at CP is making sure that our employees, that our officers perform their inspections, that they're out daily, that they're doing testing, that they're making sure that we maintain and that we create a safe work environment. That's what we're seized with at CP.
How's my time, Mr. Chairman? Very quick. Let me ask you one last question, gentlemen, if I could. A lot of Canadians are writing to me and contacting me, and many parliamentarians at this table, and saying liability for this risk should be shared between the railways and between the folks who own the dangerous substances and goods. What is your position as the two largest carriers, $16 billion last year in gross revenues? What's your position on sharing the liability? You're carrying a lot of it now, about $1 billion each in insurance liability, although that figure is not fully disclosed. Should the folks who own the dangerous substances shipped on your railways share in the legal liability if there's an accident?
Absolutely. CP has been an advocate for sharing liability for some time. We've actually pushed this. We've been a leader in the industry on this issue and this topic. We have secured all the insurance that we can provide. Some of the products that we carry, some of these catastrophic accidents, it's a bet the company mentality. Some of these accidents that could occur. The only way, in my mind, to provide additional liability is for those shippers of those products, which we have to ship, as I've stated, to share in that liability.
Ben, did you want to comment?
No.
Okay, thank you. Now move to Mr. Watson, 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to our witnesses for appearing today on what is an important study by this community. We're looking obviously at the safety management systems, transportation of dangerous goods, at the request of the Minister of Transport, looking to see if there are any additional ways that we can improve that regime. Our goal is to present interim findings by the summer and a report, full report with recommendations by the end of this year. Your testimony today helps us in that regard. I want to ask a question right off the top. There's been a lot of talk about Lac-Mégantic. Transportation Safety Board was here earlier this week with some very gripping images. I just want to start with a question. Of course, the tragedy has left quite an indelible image, I think, on not only the railway companies, but on the general public at large. Is such an indelible image, has Lac-Mégantic become informative to our understanding of railway safety, prejudicial to Canadians' understanding of railway safety, or both? What's your opinion on that? We can start with CN or CP.
So I apologize, maybe my hearing's going, but I just missed the question. Could you repeat it?
Yeah, has Lac-Mégantic as an image become informative to Canadians' understanding of railway safety? Has it become prejudicial to our understanding of it, or both?
Well, why don't I start with that, and let me back up with a.
And if you don't mind to be as brief as you can too, because I have a series of questions.
Okay, I'll be quick then.
Thank you.
You're telling me I was too long on the last answer. I apologize. When somebody's been railroading as long as I have been, you've seen all sorts of things. You can go back to February 8th, 1986, when there was a tragic accident in Alberta where a passenger train and a freight train came together. And every time something as a railroad, even though Lac-Mégantic did not happen on our railroad, we woke up with absolutely distress, and we wanted to learn everything we could, and we sent some of our own. In fact, Michael Farku, our vice president, went out there to learn as much of what happened and what we could do different. So, you know, it's the last thing we want, and absolutely it's going to be in the public's mind, and it's something that we have to reassure that we operate a safe railroad, and we will do everything we can to learn, and that's why all those steps we put in place to be able to, that we've learned and said we need new steps in place to be able to satisfy ourselves and the public that we operate a safe railroad.
Okay, maybe I should rephrase. Does it help us understand the situation of rail safety in Canada, particularly the transportation of dangerous goods, or is it prejudicial in the sense that it obscures what the reality is with respect to the transportation of dangerous goods? All right, I'll move on to another question. Mr. Vena, you had said earlier that you have the capability, both you and your competitor or your partner in the rail industry, know exactly what's on each train and each car at any moment in North America. Now, under the protective direction on information sharing, the information is provided to a designated emergency planning official with the following caveats: that the information is only for emergency planning or response, that information in the hands of the emergency planning official would be disclosed only to persons who need to know for the purposes of this of emergency planning and response, and that the information is confidential. So why not proactive disclosure if you know where everything is at on a day-to-day basis under the same terms, that it would be entirely confidential with an emergency planning official in a community? Why or why not can do that?
Our feedback is because it doesn't change every day. I think the emergency responders want to know what type, the volume, how much, and so that they can respond properly. And that's the information we give them. It just does not change what you would do by knowing that second or that minute. It's more important to know what it is, and that's what we found. And that's communication we've got with the fire chiefs in all the communities.
Okay. As a follow-up to that, the second provision, of course, is that that there has to be notice as soon as practicable about a significant change in the quarterly information. So if you're transporting something new, why not tell that proactively as opposed to historical data?
Pardon me, sir? If it's something new, then we absolutely, we sit down and tell them that we've got a new product online, and if there's a different handling for the product, then we need to let the communities know, and we'll let them know.
Can you do that proactively as opposed to after the fact?
As long as we don't get surprised with the product,
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You know, that's why I can't sit here and say I'm not going to move a new product that has slightly different configuration, but if we know about it, absolutely, we want to be able to tell people.
Safety management systems obviously are an important tool, building on the regulatory, the rules, operating rules and regulations, sort of an additional layer to promote a safety culture. You have objectives, safety objectives every year that are part of your safety management systems. Mr. Creel, maybe I'll start with you and Mr. Vena afterwards. What are your safety objectives for 2014?
2014.
Your detailed safety objectives for 2014.
As far as safety reduction in accidents, we have standards or measures in place for reduced injuries, for reduced accidents. We have investment standards. We have objectives as far as how we invest our money, why we're investing our money, and what specifically we're investing the money in.
And what are they? Do you mind telling the public?
It's CP. What is the exact standard that we submitted? 15% reduction? Or
more to the point, would you object to publicly disclosing those at the beginning of a year, as opposed to measuring them after the fact in an annual report?
As far as what our stated objectives are?
Yes. What your safety plan is for the upcoming year?
I would have to, before I spoke on the company's behalf, I'd have to consult with the company. But personally, I would not have any objection to people knowing that. No.
Mr. Vena?
There's a long list of items that we have, objectives on safety. It's communication with our employees, communication with the communities that we operate through. It is making sure that we're advocates, putting our position forward. It's showing leadership in tank cars, removal of the DOT 111s of our own. We have specific numbers that are open.
How many DOT 111s do you own?
Pardon me, sorry?
How many DOT 111s does CN own?
We own 40 of them, and the 40 are gone. We lease another 118, and we got a program to get rid of them over the next 3 years, as we're able to put them in the mix to get them built. But the safety program, the numbers are already open to anybody that wants to see them. There's no, the TSB puts them out. You can see our numbers.
I'm talking about on the front end, what your safety objectives are for 2014.
Community engagement, St. Mary's on safety culture, and in fact, if
maybe I'll be a little more specific.
You actually want my EPS? What my EPS is? I'll give it to you. I got no problem with it.
Okay. These are elements that currently aren't necessarily publicly disclosed. I'm probing which aspects of safety management systems you'd be comfortable disclosing with the public, I guess, is where I'm going. So your safety objectives for the year, in a detailed fashion, not just sort of broadly, we want to reduce accidents. By how much? From what to what? Those types of things.
Let me answer that.
Okay, very good.
Clarification, I did not realize this. All of our safety objectives on an annual basis are posted, submitted to Transport Canada, and posted across the property for all the employees. So internally, it is posted already, and it is provided.
But not to the public.
Pardon?
But not to the public. Internally,
Transport Canada to the public is our employees work in, and I mean, they're living in the communities that we operate in and through. So not broadly posted to the public, but certainly it's not confidential.
Okay.
If I could just add one point. Mr. Chair, I think we had left you a copy of our leadership and safety. Our leadership and safety document, which is a culture of safety, that is found for the general public on the CN internet site. And I would invite you to look at that document in question on the CN internet site, and there you will see our targets for 2014. So they are publicly available in terms of what we are striving for in terms of safety for accidents and injuries.
Okay, thank you. Now move to Mr. Tote for 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for being here today, because this is helpful for us, and I think we're all on the same page that we want to see improvements. I just want to pick up a little bit on the municipal issue of interchange of thoughts with them, or interchange of actually what is actually on the trains, their ability to respond. In regards to that, I understand that both CN and CP, you have your own responders that also respond to any incident. How quickly are your responders able to be at the site of any incident within your network, from your shortest time to your longest time?
Usually we have employees that get there very quick because we're spread out. For example, in Winnipeg, we have facilities very close. But usually the first responder, the conductors on site, the locomotive engineers on site, if there's something, they advise. Usually it can be if you're within a city limit or close to it. The fire department and the emergency people from the communities they can beat us to the site. And they assess first, and they deal with the conductor to find out what's on the train. So that's the first. And we have people across the country and contractors that we hold, so that if we need to respond, we respond fairly quickly. It's not something that you want to have good experience at, but we've had to deal with these things, and we feel we're very good at being able to respond and respond quickly.
Mr. Creel?
I would say there are multiple layers of defense and response. To Jim's point, to the conductors trained in hazmat response and hazmat handling, we have hazmat specialists across the property that are there immediately. They're on call 24/7 to at least counsel and coach those that are on the ground. And as you go up through the organization, to the mechanical officers, to the train masters, all of those individuals have had training, and we're in the process of providing additional training. So as far as response time, it's immediate. Now, the degree of response, it escalates as time goes on and gets stronger and stronger. Okay. But it is an area that we feel very strong. And even to that point, we've been in collaboration with CN prior to Lac-Mégantic to decrease our response time, to increase our ability, sharing each other's resources, sharing each other's employees, sharing each other's knowledge and our supplies in the event of a hazmat accident.
If I could just add a point to that. Part of our community outreach was really to reach out to those first emergency responders so we can have a direct rapport with them. When an incident happens, we as Mr. Creel indicated, we also have many lines of defense, starting from the conductor, going to the local individuals who are trained in hazmat to a certain degree. Our highly skilled and trained individuals are strategically located throughout the network. We've got a very vast network. But what's important to us in our community outreach with those first responders is to create that link. When an incident occurs, they're on the phone immediately talking to the fire chief, if he's the emergency responder, with our dangerous goods officer who may be coming. He'll be in a plane or he'll be in a helicopter, he'll be on the road to get to that site immediately. Part of our training, whether it's through railroad emergency response or through TransCare, is to provide, not to how to fight a fire, but how to respond to a rail car. That's why we spend a lot of hours on the ground with emergency responders to train them about the intricacies of a rail car and what differs from a regular house fire or industry fire and so forth. More often than not, communities may have a hazmat response, and oftentimes they do not, or they've got a coalition with other communities. So we put a lot of emphasis with regards to creating that communication link, but most importantly, as a first responder, what to be on the lookout, how to be prepared, how we are structured in terms of our emergency response.
Okay, thank you. Obviously that's dealing with the after incidents. I want to turn the channel a little bit to your safety management systems and trying to avoid the incident in the first place. And as brief as you can be, but with some detail, I would like to have a response from each of you, CNCP, and also from Mr. Bork, regarding the smaller rail companies that you represent and their implementation. How do you plan your SMS regime? Who is involved in that process? How do you measure internally and audit any goals that you have? and who's involved in that measurement process. And lastly, I'd like all of you also to touch on the aspect of employee input on matters of concern that may arise. How are they protected in your safety management system to make sure that there's never a fear for somebody coming forward when they do see a safety concern, that there's repercussions on them for that? So if each of you could address that reasonably briefly, but would give us some detail, I'd appreciate it.
So why don't we, I'm going to pass this off to Michael Farku, who's our Vice President, Safety and Sustainability, just to start off on how we measure the SMS. And then I'd like to, but just before I do that, let me comment on that last piece on employee engagement. We engage with our unionized employees and all our employees at a number of different levels. We engage with them at a system level where we have the general chairman of all the major unions that we sit down, and it's the policy committee to make sure that we've got the right policies in place, that we work together to enhance safety out in the field. We have 102 health and safety committees across the country in Canada, where we work with, again, locally with the different union members and people that operate trains, fix cars. So we have that. We have an ombudsman so that if people feel that they, for some reason, don't want to talk directly to a supervisor, they can call in anonymously and call in. We also just started with St. Mary's University a program where they are collecting data for people that want to phone in and talk about safety issues and safety programs, and they collate it and they add it up on a completely anonymous manner so that we get the information. For us, our employees are the very first level of safety, and if they are not safe, that's where you have problems. If people don't tie down handbrakes, even though we have a rule in place, and don't secure the train properly, even though we have systems in place that should stop the train automatically, we want the employees to do that. So I think we're tied in with the unions, we work together well with them, and I don't see, we're always looking for ways to improve, but we've got it at multiple levels, from my level right down to the local manager with the local union people out in the field.
So if I could just speak briefly on auditing and measuring. And the question becomes is, why do we keep numbers? And quite honestly, it's to ensure that we are progressing, we're on the right track, and what we have in place is effective. So when we look at our measurements, and our measurements will go down to the very lowest level in terms of an exact yard or terminal, so we can really see whether those terminals, those locations, those geographic operations, those varying departments are continuing to improve, and that they are, no pun intended, on the right track. So when we establish fairly aggressive targets with regards to all those levels of our operation, it's to ensure that everyone is progressing, and we have that continuum with regards to our safety. Auditing, and there was a comment with regards to Transport Canada. I can't wait for an outside party to come in and audit it. They do a lot of audits with regards to CN, but we have a very robust, very aggressive plan with regards to auditing. Jim Bennett talked about the 400,000 plus testing that we do on our employees. Mr. Creel talked earlier with regards to those human behavior elements. Those are issues that we're always on the lookout for, is whether our rules, our policies, instructions are being adhered to and so forth. It provides a lot of feedback for the employees. When we talk about that input, those generate a lot of discussions between management and the employees, and those are very important to us. We learn a lot through our testing from feedback from the employees as we provide feedback and coaching to those. Auditing with regards to terminals. When I talk about ensuring terminals are on the right track, if I see a little blip in the screen, I'm seeing someone's having difficulty, I'll parachute in surgically teams in there to ensure we get a sense of what's going on, how to right-size it, ensure the effectiveness of what we have. And plans, with regards to safety plans, we start out with plans at the beginning of the year. Everyone develops their safety plans in their terminals. I personally review them, but they have to be dynamic enough. If something has changed and so forth, we need to also ensure that we're shoring up those areas. That's a form of auditing for us. So we've got many levels. Dangerous goods. I've got dangerous goods officers. We also audit with regards to some of our load sites. We've got very detailed inspections that we look for at the loading sites. Very active with regards to that.
Very much. much. Now move to Mr. Sullivan, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. The part of the safety management system is to do a risk analysis. And you must have done a risk analysis of the effect, the risk, the change in risk between transporting 500 rail cars of dangerous goods of oil per year to 140,000 rail cars. And I understand that CN wants to double it by 2015. CN currently carries about 60,000. They want to be at 120,000. Can we get a copy of that risk assessment?
Did we do a specific risk assessment on, we do a risk assessment on the totality of what we move and the changes and the flows. We don't tie it because there's change in flows depending on where they're headed makes a big difference. We do have some risk assessments that we've performed in corridors, and absolutely we'd be more than willing to have people take a look at those risk assessments.
Was there also a risk assessment done when you and CP both abandoned the Ottawa Valley line and therefore drove all of this stuff through heavily populated areas?
I was not in a position to comment about that. I don't know what we did, or I was not in that part of the country.
It was in the last 3 years, so...
I was not. I was in the U.S. For 5 years before I came to Canada.
Are you aware of a risk assessment of abandoning the Ottawa Valley line?
No, I'm not. No.
Can we find out? Can you find out and get back to us?
We'll have to get back to you. Yeah.
It's one of the concerns of the people of Toronto is that by abandoning those alternate routes, and you're doing that again in New Brunswick, you are driving dangerous goods through heavily populated areas. With regards to your own liabilities, James Beardley, an executive with Marsh McLennan, told the Wall Street Journal that there isn't enough insurance on the planet to safely insure a worst-case scenario involving the transportation of dangerous goods by rail. So, what is your response to that?
We have liability, and we look at what we need to carry for insurance, and we're carrying enough insurance. We've never had anything near the level of insurance that we carry, nowhere near.
But this was a worst-case scenario, so something that hasn't happened yet.
I'm just telling you that we are very diligent in how we go through this process. Okay. I was asked by one of the members, and I'm sure he knew the number before he asked me, the amount of revenues that we have. We have a responsibility as a company to make sure that we handle that part of our due diligence properly, and we're very comfortable that we're carrying enough insurance at CN, and I'm sure CP is in the same boat.
I've got a bit different view. I would say that, I don't know if the gentleman is right or wrong, I would say that the railway has secured all the insurance we can secure. We can't buy any more insurance.
Right.
I would say that there's potential for certain accidents that it would exceed the value of the insurance that we have. That's why we're so compelled and we're such strong advocates that the only other people that can buy additional insurance would be the shippers of the products. This should be collaborative effort. This should be we secure all we can secure, they secure all they can secure. That has not happened. They've been not mandated to do that. It's not a regulatory requirement. We're huge advocates of that. It needs to happen.
We learned Tuesday that the .111 cars are unsafe above 20 miles an hour at least. We don't know what speed they are safe at. But if, as was done with the Mississauga train derailment, your companies were ordered by, if you're going to continue to use .111s for at least the foreseeable future, but because there isn't a way to today replace them all, what would be the reaction to a 15-mile-an-hour speed threshold limit for traveling dangerous goods through inhabited areas, for densely populated areas?
What was the question against?
What would be the reaction of the railway companies?
I would be extremely concerned with all the unintended consequences. If we slow trains down to 15 miles an hour through all urban centers across this country or across the United States of North America, there's a whole series of other unsafe situations that would occur. We'd have block crossings. We'd have people that would, and they have and they will and they do, get impatient for trains when they're slow-moving trains. They would run around gates. They would expose themselves, their families. So I don't think it's something just as simple as saying there's one silver bullet. The best answer is to eliminate the .111 car. the pre-2011.111 car. That's the best answer. That is the best way to mitigate this risk.
If it's unsafe, you guys are going to carry them anyway.
Well, I wouldn't suggest, well, listen, let's be honest. Let's be realistic. It's about risk mitigation. Everything in life can be unsafe if it's not done properly. For us to be able to take a railway that we're trying to move the Canadian economy's goods, grain specifically. I've spent a lot of my time talking about grain over the past couple of months. Could you imagine if we were mandated to do what we do and we move all those trains at 15 miles an hour? Because there's a degree of risk in everything you do. There's a degree of risk when you get out on the highway and you drive your vehicle. You could have a flat tire. You could have a blown tire and wreck that vehicle. The only way to eliminate that risk, the only way to make it unsafe, or to make it safe, an unsafe situation unsafe, is to eliminate the activity. That would equate to almost eliminating the activity. There would be tremendous unintended consequences. So I would be extremely concerned if that was a resolve that were to come out of a result of this.
And now move to Mr. Komarnicki, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And you just mentioned some grain. Of course, two commodities in my riding in southeast Saskatchewan. Grain is fairly important, so both CN and CP need to keep up their game in moving that 100-year crop. The other thing that happens to occur in my riding, of course, is Bakken crude, both southeast Saskatchewan and in North Dakota, South Dakota as well. And in one of the areas of concern, of course, is there's been a significant increase in the number of cars being utilized or tankers for moving crude, and a substantial increase with the understanding, of course, that there will be a yet further increase. Safety, of course, being important. But what I haven't heard a lot about it is the fact that there are transload facilities. Of course, some of the oil is trucked to a transload facility and then placed on cars that are moved to various parts. And I understand that there will be a significant increase in transload facilities, and some of that Bakken crude, of course, is volatile, and there may be some concerns about safety responsibility and what might happen. But one of the questions I have is, and of course it affects my city, is that I know CP hauls the crude from southeast Saskatchewan, is that many of your transload facility, or at least the one that I'm particularly concerned about, is located right in the middle of the city because you probably have a track there. So my question to you is, one, what is the risk assessment in terms of transload facilities? Two, why would they be placed in cities when they could be placed elsewhere? It's not like a moving car. It's simply a matter of having a siding or a track where you can park cars for transloading facilities. Three, you've had transload facilities in places, smaller communities where the local fire departments have concerns about whether they're able to respond, and we see transload facilities there, whether or not they're capable of responding. So three questions. Could you answer them? Perhaps Mr. Creel.
I'll do my best. Let me start with the actual location of the facilities. The customers, by and large, determine the location of the facilities. The people that actually build it, we don't own the facilities where these transload operations are occurring. Second point, from a risk mitigation standpoint, that's something we've been very seized with as this crude by rail has grown. What we've done specifically at CP and what we continue to do is through an investment. We're taking rail out, jointed track out. We're replacing it with ribbon rail or continually welded rail, heavier rail, stronger rail, more ties, more ballast. We're in a process now of about a 5-year process where a lot of these territories from a risk assessment standpoint or from a risk mitigation standpoint that this crude runs on is where we're strategically investing additional money. Through inspection, we purchased, or in the process, we've just recently last year ordered 3 rail defect test cars that we're going to own ourselves, and we're going to operate on a continuous loop in these areas where the crude moves, so that if there is a track defect, a rail defect, we'll find it and mitigate it and remove it before it creates and causes a derailment. So there are multiple layers of approach that we're taking to mitigate the risk and to reduce the likelihood that an incident will occur in these areas.
You've answered 2 of the questions, and come back to the third, but one, the location of the transload facility. Are you saying you haven't done any risk assessments in terms of whether it's better to have a transload facility where there's houses and people living as opposed to outside the community, when it's a question of investing in a siding rail or a place where they
Okay.
can be transloaded? Are you saying you haven't done that risk assessment?
Let me clarify my statement. I've only been at CP for 13 months, so I'm not certain of that answer. I would assume the answer is yes, but instead of me making an assumption, we'll get a firm answer and we'll come back to the committee, and my colleagues can get that information for us.
Fair enough, and I would appreciate receiving that, because it seems to me, just from a quick 30,000-foot observation, if there's any risk at all, those would be better placed outside communities than inside communities.
Absolutely.
And the other question is, you obviously have transload facilities within cities or communities that may or may not have the capacity to respond to an emergency situation. Have you made that assessment, and what plans do you have in terms of ensuring that the emergency response readiness is not only available but capable of handling whatever the risk might be?
Okay, Keith, I'm going to ask Mr. Shearer. That's his area of responsibility. He manages day to day.
So we have, just to answer that specific question, sir, we have purchased additional equipment. We have it strategically located in areas of the network where we can very quickly mobilize it. We've also done training, and we've helped emergency responders to make sure that they're schooled and up to speed, as my colleagues at CN said, with respect to tank car safety and how to respond to tank cars. So we've done a lot of effort on that front.
Now, with respect to what you can do, but with respect to the community's capacity or the local firefighters' capacity, what have you done in that respect?
Well, it's similar. We've worked closely with the local responders, the fire chiefs, and we are helping to educate them, and we're also making sure that they're schooled on the equipment that we have available. They know where it is. So again, we work very closely with them.
And is there any protocol about whether or not a transload facility can be located before all of that is done, or before you have the readiness necessary in case of an event?
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
You know, obviously you do those assessments, but is it your policy not to locate transload facilities until all of the safety aspects that are of concern are looked after?
Yes, we do. We do a risk assessment when we're putting a transload facility in, and we understand what the risks are, and we work with communities as well.
All right. I'm not sure if I have more time or not, but I'll change to the DOT 111 cars. Now, obviously, both CN and CP don't own a significant number of DOT 111, but my understanding is that there are about 80,000 of DOT 111s in circulation, and the cost, of course, of getting those either retrofitted, which is maybe not possible, or manufactured, is significant. But are you aware that there are obviously that many cars out there, and the length of time that it would be reasonable to expect that they would, over a course of time, be replaced? I understand from one of the manufacturers that were here, it's not a simple process to just simply put that kind of number or those kind of numbers on track. Anyone prepare to comment on that?
I would say, as far as how long it would take to replace those cars, you're limited to the capacity of what the manufacturers that make the cars can produce. And as I understand it, unless it's changed dramatically in recent past, there's capacity out there for about 15,000 cars a year. The key point is, though, that the railways do not own these cars, so the decision makers that have to make the decision to invest the money to convert the cars are actually the shippers, or the car owners or leasing companies. So it's beyond our realm and our ability to mandate that they do that.
So
let me just, if I could, let me just add to that. At the end of the day, we don't own the cars. We're going to, at CN, we're changing out the cars we own. We've got a plan. We just can't get it done faster than 3 years. So we're going to take the 3 to 4 years to get it done. We'll do the ones this year.
Of course, the percentage is small in terms of the number of cars.
But we have been clear as a rail industry that we need the cars. We need the cars, and we've said the new tank car, the type of tank car we need in place, and we need the governments to step forward and say it's time to change out the DOT 111s, looking at everything and how fast it can be done. And we would like the government both in the U.S. and Canada to do that.
Okay, thank you. Now move to Mr. Mai, and I understand you're splitting your time with Mrs. Grant.
Exactly. But I'll start, and unfortunately, it's procedure stuff that we have to deal with, but I'd like to move a motion. the notice was sent before, that pursuant to Standing Order 108, Section 2, the committee undertake a study on the recent recalls by General Motors, that one meeting be dedicated to the study, that in relation to the study, witnesses be invited to appear at the earliest opportunity, including the Minister of Transport regarding corrective action by Transport Canada to ensure the security of Canadians, as well as representative of General Motors, and that every effort be made to ensure that the meeting be televised. I don't know if we can have the discussion on the motion later on, or do...
I would have advised you to do this at the end of the meeting and made
Yeah.
notice, but...
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you're...
So I move the motion, and if you agree, then we can have a discussion about it, because I don't want to waste time for
Instead of having that now, we'll have it at the end of the meeting. I think that's good, especially when we have our witnesses here. Okay.
With the consent of the committee. Or you can vote for it.
Do you have the consent of the committee to do that?
The end of the meeting.
To move it at the end? Yeah, okay. Ms. Moran, 5 minutes.
Bonjour, je suis très contente.
Good morning. I'm very happy to be back at the committee, particularly when it's dealing with this study. I have many trains going through my riding, and CN and CP, you are prominent there. Mr. Vena, you mentioned in your testimony that there were very few accidents. You assured us that it was 97.997% of transportation was safe. I understand Mr. Watson's question, who asked whether or not Lake Megantic has had some influence on the way rail transportation is conceived. In the figure that you cited, can you tell me what you base that figure on? How did you do your assessment to reach that figure of safety transportation?
An association of railroads that gathers all the information from all the railroads and came up with a number of incidents out of everything that was moved. So it wasn't CN or us specifically, it was the AAR.
Moi, j'ai pas de problème avec le chiffre, je veux savoir quels sont les critères.
Got no problem with the figure. I just want to know what the criteria are to make that assessment, the safety assessment.
Do you have any incidents at all with tank cars that are moving the product? So if there was an incident, that gets counted as an incident. It doesn't have to be a major incident. It could be any incident that was reported, very minor, but it still was an incident.
Okay. C'est la seule façon. Parfait. Monsieur...
All right. Mr. Creel, you mentioned with respect to prevention and safety that you were making investments in technology and also in the human element, that is training people, changing the safety culture. I have two questions. The investment that you're making in terms of technology and your human investment, I would like to know how that measures up against the investment you make in technology. You've talked about cameras, you've talked about other things, but I think that in the past you refused to have a positive train braking system, positive control system. So how do you weigh one against the other?
How much do we invest in people and training and process and technology? I don't have the number in front of me, but it's in excess of double-digit millions of dollars through technology, through people, through training. When you speak to PTC, PTC is it is a technology that's undeveloped, yet to be developed, that's been mandated in the U.S. operation. We are investing, once it's fully deployed, we estimate it's going to be in excess of $350 million. But
Est-ce que vous pourriez donner au...
Could you give the committee the figures, could you send those figures to the committee? Would you be ready to do that? The figures in terms of the investment that you make, if you don't actually have them at hand right now?
Merci. Peut-être une dernière petite question.
One last brief question. You also mentioned that there are products that you would not like to move to transport. Could you give us a list of those products that you would not like to transport?
Happy to, yes.
Est-ce que vous pouvez me le dire maintenant?
I can speak to any TIH and PIH, poisonous inhalants, toxin inhalants, things like anhydrous ammonia, chlorine, something that we must have to make our water safe to drink. That is a very toxic chemical that if it were to compromise itself in transit, it could be very catastrophic.
Puis
Well, if
In the economy, these products that we ship are necessary. We use them in a number of products in Canada, whether it's drinking water with chlorine, and it's got to get to market. So how is it going to run the market? And I'm not asking it as a flippant question, but somehow it has to get there. So it either is going to go by truck, it's going to go by rail, but it has to move from the few plants that are producing that kind of product in there. So if somebody asks CN, would we like to not transport it? We've been transporting those products safely for years, and we think that we can continue to transport them safely. Now, as a business person, sometimes you'd like to say, listen, I don't want to handle them, but where are they going to go? They're going to go by trucks. They're going to go with another method because we have not found the product, a way to get rid of all those products. And whether it's in building materials, whether it's in drinking water.
don't have a great deal of time. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Vena.
Anyway, we now move to Mr. Braid, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today, for providing us with very helpful presentations and testimony. Mr. Bork, I wanted to start with a couple of questions for you. We spent a lot of time today and in previous days as well talking about the sharing of information regarding the transportation of dangerous goods with municipal officials, with first responders. In the fall, we struck an important agreement with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in this regard. From your perspective, is this information sharing process working? Is it working well? And what is the reaction of municipal officials from your experience with respect to this process of sharing information?
Well, thanks for asking that question, because I think there has been a lot of misunderstanding around this, but I was quite close to it because I was involved with Transport Canada, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, the fire chiefs, and the industry in putting together the agreement that we have. And what's very clear is that fire chiefs in this country are not asking for live information. They are looking for the kind of information that is in the directive, which is current information but from the previous year, and to be told about trends, and that's why it's divided on a quarterly basis. For short lines, if there's a significant change, they have to inform the municipality immediately. So they have the information that they require in order to conduct training of their firefighters in the event of an accident. And then to answer your question, I think it is more than adequate because the industry has stepped up and gone above that with programs that the railways have rolled out that you've heard about today, in going out to municipalities and providing additional information, opening up that dialogue, making sure that people have all of the contact names and so on. And I have heard that there have been a couple of municipalities that seem dissatisfied with not getting the information immediately. And I think You know, there's been a miscommunication somewhere because, again, at the level of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, at the level of the Association of Canadian Fire Chiefs, these folks who are experts in this area are absolutely satisfied with the construct that we have put forward.
And would you agree that it's important to find, with this process of information sharing, the proper balance between full information transparency and at the same time safeguarding security?
You know, it wasn't so long ago that the RCMP foiled a plot by, Al-Qaeda agents in this country to blow up a via train. We shouldn't take it for granted that because we haven't had a serious security incident in this country or lately that isn't an ongoing threat. I think we jeopardize our trade relationship with the United States, who feel very strongly that we shouldn't provide that kind of live information. I think it would be very dangerous, irresponsible. And again, I would go back to, I would suggest you invite the fire chiefs here, because what you'll hear is that they are getting the information that they require to conduct training, and they've heard from the railways. They know what we're carrying. We're providing them with assistance. I mentioned earlier some of the training that we provide. We also have dangerous goods specialists who are within the Railway Association of Canada, and those dangerous goods specialists are out providing information, training firefighters, and so on.
Maybe if I could just add one element with regards to what Mr. Bork was identifying. When we came together with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, this was a want from regards to the railroads. I don't think there was any hesitation to really provide that specific information to ensure preparedness for the first responders, and around the table was the Canadian Federation, the Canadian Fire Association. So we've begun rolling this out. It's detailed information with regards to how many carloads by commodity by quarter of 2013. This enables them to ensure they have the right level of training and or are planning for their training. So when we talked about dangerous goods, we don't get CNCP large fluctuations of different commodities. We're fairly stable. We may see some commodities rise. Crude is a little bit on the rise. But at the end of the day, when the train has 7 cars or whether it has 6 cars, the preparedness of those emergency responders in terms of their training remains the same. So it's important that we provide that information. We're very much in agreement to provide that information. And the feedback we've been getting has been positive.
Thank you. Your time's expired. Mr. Weston, 5 minutes. Or Mr. Watson. Okay.
John Weston, Jeff Watson. There we go. It's close enough. Mr. Vena, you told us how many .111s that you own 40. They're now gone. You lease 118. Mr. Creel, how many .111s are in CP's inventory? Both own and lease.
Approximately 200.
Is that owned or leased?
Those are all owned.
And do you lease any?
I'm not certain if we do or don't.
Okay.
I'd have to get back to you, Mr.
Okay,
Watson.
very good. Are you supporting retrofitting or phasing out?
Retrofitting, I'm sure we'll do some new purchases as well, but we'll retrofit probably a combination of both. The TSB was here saying that even the new .111 standards are not likely sufficient. There's a process underway to discuss new standards for containment. Are CN and CP participating in any of that dialogue on either side or both sides of the Canada-U.S. border currently? CP is actively participating on the U.S. side where those conversations are taking place with the industry as well.
Mr. Vena? On the U.S. side or here?
On the U.S. side, yes.
Side. Okay.
And in Canada.
Okay, very good. What would be the most, returning to safety management systems for a moment, what would be the most effective way to place a greater emphasis on the transportation of dangerous goods in the safety management system requirements for rail transportation? Mr. Creel, maybe we'll start with you, and then Mr. Vena.
In fairness, I really, it has full emphasis and full focus in our railway. I'm not certain that there's always more that can be done, but it's not for lack of effort or lack of commitment or lack of focus. So I would say that we're seized of the issue, we're seized of the concern, and will continue to be seized on a go-forward basis.
I think because of the number of commodities already labeled as dangerous commodities we handle, we have a very robust system. And I think you could spend hours here explaining the regulations that are involved in the movement of dangerous goods, the speed restrictions. I know that we sat down after Lac-Mégantic at CN and looked at everything that we were doing to see if we needed to change, and that's part of the SMS system that drives it to say, and you have to look at everything. You look at the training for people, you look at the communities, you look at further inspections, you look at we put more money on geometry cars. So that all adds in, and we have to do that, and we've done it after Lac-Mégantic. I think it's very robust, but the SMS system, and I know all of you understand it, but the people outside might not, numbers will drive it, and also technology will drive it, and if there's anything that changes, it's a continuous improvement program. It's not static that you put it up on the wall and this is what you're doing with the movement of any product or safety. It's a continuous development. So after Lac-Mégantic, we had some change. We have any incident at all, we do the change, or the trend line is different for somebody else. We try to find out what other people are doing and seeing if we can improve on it. So long answer, I apologize.
No, that's fine. Emergency response, there's specialized firefighting equipment, obviously, because you're dealing with very different types of dangerous goods. Can you tell us what that specialized equipment may consist of? And how readily available is that specialized equipment when accidents occur? Where do you position this type of equipment across your network? Maybe we'll start with Mr. Vena, and then I'd like to get Mr. Creel to answer the question as well.
You know, that sometimes you're smart to pass it off to a guy who knows it better than
Fair
you.
enough.
So away you go.
Fair
Michael?
enough.
Well, with regards to equipment, first and foremost, one of our largest assets is actually our dangerous goods. Officers who are qualified to the highest level out of Pueblo, Colorado, and they are scattered throughout. What we've done is we've entered into a lot of agreements with regards to companies, and I'll give you as an example. So if we have a flammable liquid fire, we've got arrangements already with Irving Oil's a contractor. We've got arrangements with Valero out of Quebec. We've got arrangements with railroads in terms of equipment. We have our own specialized equipment for varying goods. Now, you have to understand when it comes to dangerous goods, it's not just about the crude oil. We handle about 500,000 carloads of dangerous goods, and we have for a very long period of time. Crude oil is about less than 2% of our business. So when we talk about dangerous goods, we're talking about the full facet. So we call in many different suppliers who can assist from an environmental standpoint. We can't neglect that. Not everything burns. Things can spill to the ground. So we've got environmental caches of equipment strategically located throughout our network for that first response, whether it be booms, whether it be river rafts to put the booms in place, whether it's absorbent materials and so forth. So we've got multiple layers, but we also have a very vast network with regards to experts. And I've had incidences where I've had 5 planes in the air bringing in people from all over North America. It's not a 5-alarm fire for us, it's a 10-alarm fire for us. We will bring in as many people. As Mr. Creel had said earlier, you ramp up through a situation. So if you're in Northern Ontario, there is that time of response, you ramp up.
In terms of the placement across your network, what is the desired time, if you will, to be able to move equipment from the cached area to a location? Like, firefighters have a response time, if you will, in their communities, and that's why they strategically place fire halls, for example. What is your response ratio, if you will, for these strategically placed caches, if you will?
Yeah, I think in fairness to that question, we have to understand we have some very remote locations where roads don't go in there. So oftentimes it takes a little bit more time to bring a helicopter to bring in goods. We will actually just parachute them in terms of some of the first response equipment. When we have road access within hours, we are fully mobilized with regards to personnel and equipment. So they do vary, understanding that our country is fairly vast. We don't have
urban
always
response
dense
time?
population areas.
People in higher population areas would want to know what your likelihood is of getting those resources to them would be. I appreciate the remote area discussion, but
so in reference to a densely populated area, if we're talking about Toronto, Montreal, Edmonton, and so forth, we're talking within the hour, 2 hours, we're already there.
Okay.
Has expired.
Thank you.
And witnesses, we have to go to some committee business. So thanks very much for being here. Mr. Creel?
I'd be remiss not to make one important comment. Thinking about Mr. Watson's question about how we could improve our SMS. One of the areas that we're seized in is actually expanding and collaborating and partnering with industry, with pipelines, to improve those response times, assets, resources, to reduce the response time. The second point we're seized with is actually risk mitigation and crossing closings. We have a very problematic problem in Canada where Transport Canada's objective is to close crossings. However, CTA opens crossings, so Transport Canada may close, for instance, 3 in a year, and CTA, without collaboration, without any due process, they may open 6. Every time you have a crossing, you have an opportunity for an uncontrolled situation to occur. You have an opportunity for a truck, for instance, to impel the side of a train that may be carrying these very hazardous materials. So it's in the Canadians' public best interest and safety interests to eliminate as many unnecessary crossings as possible and to control strictly opening of any new crossings.
Okay, thank you. Point of order?
I don't think we need to go into committee business. The motion that was moved, personally, I don't want to talk about it too long. We have great witnesses who are here, quality witnesses. I still have a lot of, I think we all have a lot of questions.
So are you withdrawing the motion?
No, I would like maybe to have 30 seconds on the motion.
This is what I'm up against, Mr. Mai. If I start another round, I need to go 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't have time to do that, and I think we should have thought of that before you tabled the motion.
Well, I think we do if we only ask one question. It happened before.
What does Mr. McGinney?
Mr. Chair, I think we can accommodate another round here. I've seen this motion brought by the NDP. I think it can be dispatched in less than a minute. We have 20 minutes left on the clock. We've got 6 witnesses here today, who I'm hoping are going to come back for another 2-hour session, Mr. Chair, but I would strongly urge us to continue.
Mr. Watson?
Chair, I don't know how long it will take us to dispose of the particular motion in front of us. If we begin down the road of another round, then we may not leave ourselves sufficient time. So, Chair, I'll leave it at your discretion on that, but...
okay, thank you. Based on the comments, I'm going to take one question from Mr. Mai, one from Mr. McGinney, one from Mr. Watson, or 2 from over here to even it out, and we'll go there. Please don't abuse this. Make your question very direct, and gentlemen, try and make your responses as quickly as possible. If we're going to deal with this motion, I hope it goes quick, but we never know until we get there. Mr. Mai, one question.
Thank you very much for your great understanding, Mr. Chair. Quick last question is, and honestly, I do understand how important it is. We have one of the 2 best rail companies in Canada, in the world, in terms of safety, and that I understand. The concern that we have, and I got on the ground, is smaller companies that don't have all the resources that your companies have in terms of making sure that safety is the #1 priority. Obviously, with Lac-Mégantic, having MMA, for instance, they didn't have the same concern about safety that your companies have. So how can we, as regulators, because I think we have been failing in the fact that companies are inspected, that Transport Canada is flagging issues, but not following up on those issues. So quick question, how can you help Transport Canada make sure that all the inspections or the issues are dealt with from the company's side, and even for smaller companies? What would be your recommendation?
Let me start with that, since there are a number of short lines in our membership. Yep. And I want to assure you that we asked ourselves all of those same questions after that terrible accident. And that's one of the reasons that we have instituted a new measure where we will require a commitment to safety culture as part of membership in the Railway Association of Canada. But I also should mention that for safety management systems, exactly the same rules apply for short lines as for mainline operations. And in fact, and my colleagues can jump in a minute, where they operate on CN or CP track, then they also have to follow the standard that those railways have. Typically, a short line is operating over a much shorter distance, and they're operating at much lower speeds. Typically, they have very experienced personnel with very low turnover. They must audit their own SMS safety systems. The Transport Canada has developed guidelines for them in developing SMS, and employees have to be part of their SMS development. So one of the things that we did in following Lac-Mégantic, I asked our dangerous goods team to visit with every single one of our short line members to talk to them about the lessons from Lac-Mégantic, and two of my staff were on the ground at Lac-Mégantic helping firefighters because they are experienced dangerous goods operators. They were there for 15 days straight providing their expertise to the personnel on the ground. They then took that and went out to every single one of our short line members and had discussions with them about what they learned, re-emphasized the requirements under the Act as part of their safety management systems. I feel very confident that the short line members in our association are absolutely committed to safety, and that they understand the rules, and that we're providing every support that we can to them.
Okay, thank you. And 2 or 3 questioners, please withhold your statements, ask the questions so that our witnesses can take the time needed to answer them. Thank you. Mr. McGinney.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Gentlemen, very quickly, I want to give you the #1 conclusion of the Auditor General's report. The Auditor General is saying that Canadians basically cannot trust whether or not the railways in this country have a safety management system. That's what he's saying. It's written twice in the report. He cannot tell Canadians whether or not your SMS system's actually in place. That's the conclusion. Now, there are a whole series of other conclusions that he draws, but I want to put to you a proposition and ask you for your response. Very quickly. We're going to double the exploitation of the oil sands in the next 10 years. We're going to see 1 million barrels of excess capacity of oil that cannot go on pipeline by 2024. You have plans to build large-scale crude loading terminals in the West for a capacity of 890,000 barrels a day. We know from the Auditor General, because we can't necessarily trust the government. And the question I want to put to you is, and Mr. Creel, you'll recall these words originally as a U.S. citizen, Canadians would say, we'll trust, but we want it verified. So please tell the Canadian people who are watching what you're going to do to help Canadians have trust in the system, and particularly what pressure you're going to exert on the sitting government to do its job and regulate.
At CP, the best thing that we can do is convince Canadians they can trust us by our actions and by our results. We are the safest railway in the North American industry. We have been for the last 8 years. Our investments, our processes, our focuses, our accountabilities are seized with that, and that is the only way in my mind that will continue to earn the Canadians' trust, is to simply produce results and continue to be the safest railway, continue to be seized with elimination of 100% of the accidents. I know that's not possible, but it certainly is the objective, and I believe fully if you lower the bar and you expect anything less than that, then you're never going to have a chance of achieving that. So that's what we're seized with at CP.
Do you want to comment at all?
No, listen, I love it. He went over from CN, and now he's the safest railroad in North America. He keeps on saying that, but so are we. We're very good. But at the end of the day, I agree with Keith. Listen, I think he handled it right. That's exactly what we need to do as an industry.
Thank you. Mr. Watson, one question.
Yeah.
One comment, if I could. I'd like to let Mr. Vena know that the first quarter of 2014 is the safest quarter that CP has ever experienced.
I will let you gentlemen have that discussion after. Mr. Watson.
They can they can continue that. They can continue that conversation out in the hallway a little bit later, and hopefully that keeps to words only. Very briefly, two things I want to note. Looking at the on the TSB's website at the statistics, annual railway statistics, I note that CN for accidents involving dangerous goods went from 85 to 99. That's up 16%. Accidents involving dangerous goods for CP went from 29 to 34. That's up 17%. But there's another interesting thing, you'll have to explain this to me. Dangerous goods leaker. TSB says that that's an unintentional release of hazardous material while in transit. What does that literally mean? Those are both up for both companies, but what is an unintentional release? Where would that happen? How would that happen?
First of all, a DG leaker is also referred to as a non-accidental release. That really means it's a shipper-caused issue, like a faulty O-ring, a valve that's not fully closed, and there's a venting from the car. It could be an overload, and it's a pressure release. Those are the kind of circumstances that lead to DG leakers. The other statistic you referred to is really just about involvement of dangerous goods within a train, but not necessarily that they were involved in a derailment, that there was any release. One of the key stats in the TSB's website is accidents involving a release, and the annual average is usually in the area of 2 to 3 per year. So it's actually very simple to come up with the 99.997% that was discussed earlier by simply taking the number of shipments, and combined dangerous goods shipments on CN and CP are approaching about 1 million a year, and yet you can see from the TSB's own statistics that there are in the area of 2 to 3 accidents involving a release, and as we talked about earlier, that can be any release, literally picking up a shovel full of pellets.
And the statistics show 3 each for CP and CN last year.
Anyone else? No?
That's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Who's got the last question here? That's it? Okay. And with that, gentlemen, thank you very much for being here and participating. And with that, we'll let you go. We have got some committee business. So thanks again. Okay.
Mr. Watson.
Okay. No. If I could.
Thank you,
Mr. Watson.
Chair. I was hoping we could spend the entire meeting talking about rail safety in this country. Obviously, that's very important. That's why the committee is seized with this, and instead we have a motion to deal with. Chair, I move that we move in camera.
Okay, I have order, please. Order. I have a motion to move in camera. Discussion on the motion.
I guess I'm just trying to get my head around the reasoning for that, Mr. Chairman. This is a very innocuous
I'll
motion.
let you ask Mr. Watson that.
In camera, no.
Sorry? Sorry,
no.
Mr. Chair?
No.
Sorry?
I said you can ask Mr. Watson that. He moved the motion. So
We just asked for discussion on the motion, so have we got something wrong? Or
no,
It's not debatable. So
we have a motion to go in camera. All in favor of the motion? Those opposed? We go in camera, so we'll suspend for a second while we go into camera. If I could please ask anyone that's not a member or staff to please vacate. Thank you.